Okay, the Mishnah, the Mishnah was stating certain fences that the rabbis enacted to ensure that people won't come to violate the Shabbat. One of the things on Shabbat is you're not allowed to make a fire. Not only can't you make a fire, you can't raise an existing fire. So the rabbis were concerned that you might come to, if you read at a, if you read close to a fire, you're reading close to an air, an oil lamp. Adam, you want to show me how do I get this picture off? Oh, I'm supposed to press an X somewhere here to get this. What do I press?
Oh, you know what? I don't think we can, 'cause I think that's making sure it's going to YouTube, but we can just do it like that if it's distracting. But you know
No,
what? Let me do this.
no, it's all right. It's all right. It
I can
doesn't.
just make this.
Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you very much. So that's what the Gemara, the Mishnah said. And the Mishnah stated, we're up to the last statement of the Mishnah. Lo yochel hazav im hazava. You have it in the Mishnah? The last statement on 11a3. So a zav is a man who has a certain discharge, which is not a normal discharge, and he's tamei. If he has that discharge, he's tamei. He's contaminated. He has to go to the mikveh. He has to wait 1 day. He has to go to the mikveh. Now, sometimes if he has, depending how many discharges he has, is whether he will be contaminated for 7 days. Sometimes he'll have to be contaminated for 7 days, and he'll have to count 7 clean days in order for him to become pure again. So that's a zav. A zav is someone who has something called a normal discharge that a man has when he's with his wife. That's a normal discharge, but this is a different type of discharge. And even the discharge that one morning, Nathan, that one has being with one's wife, that also would contaminate him. He has to go to the mikveh as a result of that. But this is a not normal discharge that he has, which also contaminates him. And now that's a zav. Now there's something unusual for a woman. Now the word zav is like from the word to flow, a certain flow. So a woman also, she has something called a nida. She has a time that she has a period, but then there's a time period if she sees blood at the time that she's not expecting her period. Let's say the 11th, let's say the normal time she has a period, and then 7 days later, after 7 days, she generally won't see blood. And then if she sees blood between that period after 7 days, that makes her a zava. That makes her tamei. She would be uh, unclean, forbidden for a husband that day. And depending how many days in a row would she have, if she has her that unusual period, if she has that period of multiple days in a row, it would contaminate her for 7 days, and she would have to count 7 clean days, 7 days in a row straight, without seeing any blood. That is a little bit about a zava. Now, regarding if a person would have relations with this woman who's either a nidah, either when she has her regular period and she did not yet, and she wasn't not able yet to, and the time to go to mikveh wasn't yet didn't yet reach, or if he has relations with this zava, this woman who has sees blood at not the normal time. So both cases, there's a very serious penalty called karet, being cut off from the next world. According to the Rambam, if a person goes ahead and has relations with her during this time, the rabbis created certain fences between a husband and a wife during the time that she is tamei, during the time that she is forbidden to him. When relations would be forbidden, the rabbis created certain fences to ensure that they won't come to have relations. So one of the things that the rabbis created was that regarding food time, meal time, that they should not eat off the same plate. They would eat off the same plate because we know having a meal in the company of someone else is a social setting and creates certain closeness when you have a meal with somebody. and there's a concern they might come to eventually sin. So therefore, the rabbi said, you would go ahead, if you go ahead and you do something different to remind you of your status, that you can't come, that who you are, that, the state that she's not permitted to you, that will be, then you'll be able to eat together with her on the same table. Therefore, if let's say each one will have their own mat on the table, or they will put something on the table as a reminder, which is the common thing today. A husband and a wife, during the time period that the wife is a nidah, what do they do when they go ahead? One of the things that, now, if you change seats, that also would do the trick. That also remind, whatever your general seat that you sit at the table, now you switch seats with her during that time period. It also would serve as a reminder of the state. And some people, what they do is they just have something that a flower or something that they, a silk flower or something they put on the table. That's a reminder to that, the state that they are in. So that is, it's even, this is a halacha that applies today. A guy, before they get married, good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. Before they get married, they take a chatan class, right? They learn for the marriage before they get married in order to know the laws. And one of the things that they're going to learn about before they get married is this halacha of what's the law between a husband and a wife when she's a nidah, when she's forbidden, regarding when you're eating at a table, what do you do to remind yourselves about the state that your wife is in order that people shouldn't get too close, that shouldn't lead to worse than mixed dancing. Of course, mixed dancing is a problem, but we're talking even about
Passing the salt.
Yeah. You can pass the salt to her, but we don't hand things directly. We don't put things in. You don't give things into her hand directly. You put something down right in front of her during that time period. And when you have good fences, you'll never come to do the sin of actually sleeping with one's wife in a state when she's a nidah. The idea of food being a big key of socialization that creates closeness. The rabbis understood that. The power of food, eating together, having a meal together, and without doing something when you're in that state, that there's a concern how far it's going to go. So that is what the Mishnah states, that a zav with a zava, this woman who's a zava, who had her period not in the normal time, so she's forbidden to the husband. So if the man, let's say, would be not tameh himself, the man, let's say, did not have any unusual discharge, he can't eat with his wife in the normal fashion if he is tahor, if he is pure, because if she is unclean, right? If she's a nidah or she's a zava, if she's forbidden to him, he will not be able to eat with her. But the Mishnah states, one of the commentators say, that even a zav who's having unusual discharge, and not a normal discharge, and therefore he, at that state, it'd be more difficult for him to have relations with his wife when he's having these type of situations. Nevertheless, the Mishnah still states he can't lo yochel hazav im hazava. He could still not eat together with his wife without doing something to remind them that of the state that they're in order they won't come to second base, third base, fourth, home, as they say. That's why Rashi says, the kol shekain, Rashi says, and certainly a tahorim azava, if the man is not, no issue with the man, he certainly would not be able to eat with his wife when she's a zava. Okay, so now, because, by the way, just for the record, as you know, when a lady has a period, before she's permitted to be back with her husband, she has to count, there's a certain process. She has days to wait before she starts counting 7 clean days. And she needs to count 7 clean days. And then after she counts 7, usually she waits 4 or 5 days, whatever the custom is. Then she counts 7. If she doesn't see any blood, if the system is clear, if the lady's system is clear, depending on your custom, whether you wait 5 days or 4 days, Then, if she's clean, she makes an inspection before sunset to ensure that she is clean. And then that's called a hefsek tara. And then she counts 7 clean days. If everything goes good, those days are clean. Then she goes to the mikveh right afterwards. That is the basic process of nida. And the reason for the 7 clean days is because of this woman that's a zava, that because of the woman that has her period not during the right time, and it's very hard to know if it keeps to know when is the right, when is she having her period during the regular time, not regular time. So the Jewish girls, they said not to make a confusion. They said we are going to wait for make sure it's 7 clean days. So that is because technically, if she had a period during the regular time, it's just 7 days. After 7 days, if she would go to she would go to the mikveh. But here, because it gets confused between the nida and the zava, where is she standing in the calendar? Is this blood during the normal time, not normal time? And so therefore they wait 7. That's why there's 7 clean days. That's the law. So the Gemara says like this. So the Mishnah stated, "Lo yochal azav." Good morning, Emmanuel. Lo yochal azav v'mazava lehergel avera. The zav does not eat with the zava because of the concern that they should not have. They have to do something on the table to ensure that they won't come to sin. Okay. Tanan Hasam, Tanatam. Somebody once told me I was learning with a middle-aged gentleman, and he said to me, Rabbi, the rabbis made so many fences. It seems like it makes it more difficult for the people. If they wouldn't have these fences, it would be less difficult. I said to him, if you wouldn't have the fences, you wouldn't be keeping anything. Because you see the people who say, okay, I don't want to do the fence. I'll just do the basic law. They're not even doing the basic law. From my experience, I think it's a lot of times, what I see, if you appreciate the fence, then you'll appreciate the law. If you don't appreciate the fence, the people who do not appreciate, if they don't have the right attitudes toward the rabbis and they're instituting certain fences to ensure that people don't violate the big law, so to speak, those people I don't see their Yireh Shamayim. I don't see their God-fearingness.
It erodes. It erodes. It erodes.
Yes, exactly. Right, exactly. I don't see these people.
A little at a time, even if it's not in one swing, a little at a time, it becomes less important. And then one thing leads to another. They're there
Right,
for a
right,
reason.
right. Good morning, Simon. Exactly. That's what I want to, that's the point. Okay, great. So now the Gemara is going to bring a Mishnah that discusses a decree, a gzeira, a protection that the rabbis enacted because they're afraid that a person might come to forget and violate the Shabbat. Here comes the Mishnah in Eruvin. Tanan hatam. Lo yamod adam b'shut hayachid. Excuse me. A person cannot stand in private property. Let's say you're standing in your house and you're sticking your head outside the window of your house. Let's say that window goes into the public property, and there's outside your house in the public property. There is a utensil, a drink, a cup there's a table with a cup, and there's a cup of a liquid, a cup of water, and you want to drink in Rishut Rabim, or you're standing inside your private property, and you have your fence right by your fence inside your front yard, and you're standing by the entranceway into your front yard, and your front yard is adjacent to the public property. You can't go ahead and stand in your front yard in your private property and bend into public property and drink in the public property. Now, what's the problem? The problem is because maybe if I'm standing in private and I'm drinking in public,
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're standing in private property,
right, and you're
and
drinking,
you reach over into public property. You're like standing at the borderline.
Exactly. You're in the borderline within your front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you stand, and then you bend your back
Your
forward.
body's over forward into the into the public.
Right, right. You have
Even without drinking, it's a problem. Just holding the cup is a problem.
okay. So it sounds like from the Gemara that so far the Gemara does not say that there'll be a problem of holding that cup, because it sounds like that if you're holding it in public property, so that's not, there was no transfer, there was no change of, we
Why?
identified.
Because your feet are in private still?
My feet, my feet are in private, and most of my body is still in private. The Gemara's case
Ah,
here, most of my body is in private, but
ah,
my hand is in public, and I
ah. And
pick
your
and I,
head.
and I pick up the cup. So the cup is now, it's still, we're going to still consider the cup in public property because my hand is in public property,
Right.
and but my body is in private. So the problem would be if I pick up the cup on public property and I move it to where, and I move it out, meaning it's in the domain. If my hand is outside in public property, we consider it, the Gemara considering it's in public. I pick up the item in public property, it's still in public property. What's the concern? I might draw it within to where I am
In
standing, which
private.
is private property. And that will be a transfer of domain from public to private.
If you stick your head out and you drink it a little bit out, your head's out there, then what happens then?
Okay, so now we're going to talk about it. Yeah, we're going to get to now. Let's continue. Yes, Nathan has something to say. Yes, Nathan.
Also a problem if you stay in private property, move 4 months in private property, and then haven't picked it up, put it down in public property for a month away from where it started.
Where did you pick it up? What's your case?
Public.
If you pick up a public and you move it for amot, that would be a problem too. Right.
Always,
So now-
that's always a problem.
Right. So now,
Always,
now the Gemara says the following. The Mishnah states, I cannot stand in private, stick my head in public, and drink in public property. That's case one. Case two, the Mishnah states, I can't be sure to Rabim, I can't stand in public property and do the same thing as from standing in public and bend my head over to private property and pick up the cup and drink in private property. Also, I can't go ahead because it'll be the problem. Maybe I'm going to take the Simon the cup and throw it into the public property. However, the Mishnah states, if I bent the majority of my body, I really did a real bend. The majority of my body and my head are in the other property, right? I'm standing at property one, but the majority of my body and my head is in the other property. There, we're not afraid that a person's gonna move the item to move it into where I am, where my feet are. When I'm only part of me, good morning, Mark. When only part of me is in the other property, my head is in the other property, part of my body is in the other property, or it's over there. If only then there's a concern, I might move the item to where I am standing, where my feet are. But if I am, my majority of my body and my head is in the other property, so then there's not a concern that I'm going to actually move it into the other property. Because if I'm like this, I'm not going to forget so much to bring it into where I am standing. But if I'm like this, then I might morning Morris, and I might come to forget and bring into that property. So that's what the Gemara says. And then now we're turning the page. 1 second. If I put my head and majority of my body into the place where I'm drinking, that will be permitted. Now on Yud Aleph of a base, 11b, 11b1. Yeah, we skipped two pages. We want to get back to it because we wanted to 11b1. Yeah, we had skipped around 2 dot in. Yeah, we got yes. So too regarding a wine press, and we're going to see what the story with the wine press, what the issue with what the story with the wine press. But that will be the same thing regarding a wine press. The Gemara will explain. Now, Iboyelu. the Gemara, the people in the yeshiva had the following question. Carmelit Mai. Let's say an area that's called a Carmel, one in Mars. A Carmel is a domain that's rabbinically prohibited to carry from public property into this domain, from private property to this domain, or for amot in this domain. What is this? It's a rabbinic, it's an area that the rabbis gave it certain status. And what is, let's say, what's one of the examples of a Carmel? Let's say you have a valley, a desert, where it's not a place that the public walks in. It's a desert. You know, how common is it that the desert, you don't have 600,000 people walking in the desert, except in the Midbar, right? But in today's day, you don't have 600,000 people walking in the desert. So the desert is not considered, does not fit the criteria of a public property that I can't carry for amot in, or I can't carry from private into the desert. However, it's not really private either in a certain sense, because it's a public area, right? It's a public area. So the rabbi said, if you're going to allow people to carry from private property, let's say, into the desert, then people are going to go ahead and actually carry from private property into a real public property, right? And therefore the rabbi said, we kind of forbade you to allow you, we can't allow you to carry from private property into the desert. Morris, is that clear? That is the morning. That is the rabbi's gezerah, the rabbi's decree. Now, the question is, what is the status if what is the status if I'm standing in public property and I want to go ahead and stand and drink the same story that the Mishnah had, but I want to bend over and drink something that's in a carmelit, right? So I'm standing, the same story, I'm standing in private property and I'm sticking my head out into, would the laws be the same prohibition that the rabbi said that I can't go ahead and stand in private and bend into public because I might come to draw the thing to me? Would that be the same problem? Would the rabbis make the same prohibition by a carmelit? The same way I can't take something from a carmelit, from this desert, and bring it into my tent. So would the rabbi say the same thing regarding this carmelit domain, this desert, to bring into my tent? Could I go in and stick my head outside my tent, the tent, let's say, being private property, stick my head out like that? You told me if I'm going from private to public, I can't do that unless majority of my body and my head is down there. So what would the rabbi say? The same prohibition by a carmelit? Should be. So Mark said it should be. So Mark is in Abaye's corner. I'm Abaye, he. That's the same thing. What's the difference? Well, Rava says Rava points out there is a difference. What's the difference? The case is not different in its actual concern, might not be different, but the Gemara says there's something called gzeira, a double rabbinic prohibition. The rabbi that rabbis don't make a double, meaning to say like this. Generally, when the rabbis pervade something, they're coming to protect Torah law. They say on Shabbat, don't go ahead and handle a pen. Because you're going to protect the Torah law, you're not allowed to write with a pen on Shabbat. So if you don't handle a pen on Shabbat, then you're protecting the Torah law. But the rabbis don't create a fence to protect their rabbinic law. The rabbis they make a fence to protect Torah law, but not a rabbinic law where the whole law is only forbidden rabbinically. So now we call it the cheshbon, the calculation. Why can't you're telling me if you're going to create a rabbinic law that I can't bend over from my tent into the desert to drink that liquid? What's the problem? Again, we're talking about into the desert. It's a domain that's only rabbinically forbidden. Your concern is I might come to, don't do this because I might bring it into the tent. But even if I bring it into the tent, that act is only forbidden because I might come to bring it into from a public domain to a private domain. Meaning there's no technical on the Torah, there's no prohibition in the Torah to bring something from the desert into my tent. only rabbinic. So this is so that whole thing that I can't bring from the desert into tent is a fence to protect, not bring from public into a tent. So therefore, it's a fence on a fence. It's a protection to protect a different rabbinic law. You got it, Mark? Yes. Good morning, Boker Tov.
Might misunderstand, think you're
Oh, great.
private.
Great. So Nathan just said a great thing, what Nathan just said. Okay, what did Nathan say? Nathan said that if you're going to allow this, maybe people make a mistake on where the real fence needs to be done to protect the Torah law. So sometimes we say there are exceptions to this rule. In general, the rule of you don't make a fence to a fence, right? David, right? Is that clear? But that's only if you feel that if your regular fence is not, your fence is not in danger. But if you're going to make a fence if you're not going to make this case prohibited, people will make a total mistake in the other thing. So that would be a lot. Sometimes we would apply that rule. So if Rava comes along and says we don't make a double fence. Now, Abaye says over here we would make a double fence. The Tosfos points out that Abaye has this stringency of double fence specifically when it comes to carrying on Shabbat. Meaning it's not that Abaye agrees to this general rule. We don't make a fence to protect the fence. But when it comes to carrying on Shabbat, all bets off, so to speak. He's much more strict when it comes to carrying on Shabbat. Now, Tosfos does not give a reason for it. It could be Nathan's reason that Abaye might feel if you're going to go ahead, if you're not going to make the fence on the fence, even the regular fence, they're not going to keep. Because this is one of those areas of law that people have difficulty understanding well. It's one of the, I can't have a tissue in my pocket walking into public property. And once you start allowing this, if you're going to allow carrying from my tent, or now allow putting my head over for my tent. What's that again? He is right. Sometimes he says you're gonna make a fence on a fence in this area, in this carrying Shabbat. That's Abaye's rule. Yes.
So the difference between having a fence with people drop, having a fence in front of the Grand Canyon, because it's such a serious problem carrying on Shabbat. Let's put a fence so you don't fall into the Grand Canyon.
Right. But again, it could be there's many other biblical laws that are also very serious, but nevertheless, out of all the biblical laws out there, Abaye will say, when it comes to carrying on Shabbat, I'm going to make a double fence. When it comes to other laws, I'm saying, but you can have, I'm saying, you can.
People are going to more often misunderstand.
Right. Maybe that's what, perhaps, right. Maybe that's what he holds. So therefore, when it comes to, and again, it's specific to this law of Shabbat, meaning there's many laws of Shabbat. There's 39 malachot of Shabbat. There's 39 biblical violations of Shabbat, but there's only one called carry. And that's the one of all 39, he's going to make his double gzeira. But like I mentioned to Nathan before, that there could be situations, nothing to do with Shabbat, that you will make a double gzeira. Tosfos will ask the question on a certain case, whatever the case might be, isn't this a violation of the rule? We don't make a double gzeira. So Tosfos says there are places we'll make a double gzeira. If you don't make that second gzeira, the first will never be kept. So sometimes we have to make that second gzeira because they'll just nullify the whole thing. Now obviously those circumstances have to be presented. What will be exception to that rule? What that concern will be. So that is the Gemara. That is the argument in Abaye and Rava. Will we be strict by this Carmelit, by this rabbinic domain? Would we be restricted and say you can't go ahead and bend over from the tent, from private property into this desert, which is Carmelit? David, you with me? Is it clear? Would we make a rabbinic fence, which will be a fence on a fence? So that's an argument in Abaye and Rava. Now, it seems there's a letter, if you look on the second line from the top, Rava Amah Hi Gufa Gzeira, right? And you see that on the word he, there's an aleph. That aleph takes you to the eye of the law. the eye of the law, Mark, you see on the right side of the page, is top right, it says Ein Mishpat. Mars, you see that Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. You got that? See on the top of the page? In the art scroll, I'm going to show everybody where this is. Very good thing to know. This is the top of the page. This is before Google, before everything. And he was able to tell you where to find it. You didn't have to, no computer search. Look what he did. He did the computer search hundreds of years ago. Look what he said. Maimon. He'll tell you, Adam, on the top right corner. Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah. He says this law is found in Maimon. That's the Rambam, Moshe ben Maimon. Perek Tezvav, chapter 15, Halach Hilchos Shabbat, Halacha Beis. You want to find it? That's where you're going to go look over there. Then he'll tell you there's another sefer called the Smag, Sefer Mitzvot Gedolot. He said if you want to find it, I'll tell you it's in Lavim Samachay. Look at the Lavim. There's there's 248 positive commandments, 365 you can't do. Look at number 65. You'll find it discussed. Morning where you'll find it discussed over there. Then I'll tell you where do you find it in the Torah Shulchan Aruch. In the Torah Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, Stim Shin Nun, Sif Aleph. Is that beautiful? So unbelievable, right? So show you where it is, and every page in Shas, every page in the Talmud, the 2,700 whatever pages, he's right there. He's over there, tell you exactly where to find it. Okay, so that seems to be the halacha that here we will not make the double gzera like Rava. So look at Rava's statement. Rava Amar, he gufa gzera. This whole concern of going, this itself, the whole issue of carrying from one place, from the desert. Let's see the language. He gufa gzera, taking the utensil from the desert to the tent, from a Carmelite to private property, it's a gzera in itself. That whole thing is a fence to protect, not to carry from real public to private. So are we going to get up to make a decree on top of the decree? Okay, so that's the argument. So comes Abaye, Abaye, Minala. Now Abaye has to explain himself because he is the one who's going against the general rule that you don't make a fence on a fence. So where did he see that this is different than all other places that you would make a fence on a fence? So that would be right. Two straight, right? Two doubts, right? Right. This is two rabbinic laws, right? Marcus from a svek striker, double that. Now Abaye has to prove. You're saying when you say the novel thing, because he's been learning a lot. He knows about different concepts. He's trying to apply it. David's like, wow. You see that? Okay.
He's thinking about it for a while.
Abaye. So Abaye says, I love when people smile, by the way. So good when people smile, right? Abaye. In agreement with this. How do I know this? There's a great story, Mark. It goes to Chafetz Chaim. What was the story of Chafetz Chaim? There was a certain court case, and maybe against a Jewish person, and like a lot, make up a story. And the Chafetz Chaim was called as a character witness for the guy. And the lawyer, on behalf of the defense, before he introduces his character witness of the Chafetz Chaim to be a character witness on the defendant, says, I want to tell you who the Chafetz Chaim is. And he says, the Chafetz Chaim, he talks about his saintliness and his holiness. Maybe he tells him the story that someone once stole from the Chafetz Chaim, and the Chafetz Chaim ran after him and said, I forgive you, you can keep it. He told some unbelievable stories about how great the Chafetz Chaim was. So the lawyer says, so the judge says to the lawyer, do you think these stories are true about what you're telling me? So the lawyer said a great line. Your Honor, they don't say these stories about me and you. Even if they're not true, but the Chafetz Chaim did these things, that it was true, but obviously they don't say that about everybody. So now the fact now comes to Mark. The fact that they said about Mark giving the class, they might not say that about everybody. That's the connection. Now you got the connection.
Want me to come back tomorrow?
All right. I call it kosher embarrassment. Okay. Amar Abaye, Miran Mila. The Tani, we learned, by the way, it's a good story. The Chafetz Chaim story is a good story, anyways, yeah, to remember. The Tani, we learned in a Mishnah, V'chein begat. It says a gat. What is a gat? It says you can't go, it says in the Mishnah, in Eruvin, you can't go ahead and you can't be in one place and bend over to drink by the gat. The Gemara's understanding, what's the case of the wine press? What's the issue by the wine press? That we're saying that the same law that you told me from public to private, that you can't stand in public and bend over to private and drink because maybe you're going to go ahead and carry the item from the private to public, also applies by a wine press. So the Gemara is thinking that we're talking about the wine press, what? Gat, Gimel, Tough. So the Gemara is thinking, most probably, the Gemara is thinking that the issue by the wine press is also an issue that you're sticking your head over, and you might want to, let's say the wine press, the Gemara is going to suggest, let's say, has a status of, we're talking about a wine press that has a status of, that's right, or let's say the press is a carmelit. We'll see what the case of the press, because if the press is private, so that's already the general law of, you told me you can't go from public to private. You don't need to tell me that a case again. You don't give me a variation of a different situation. So that's what the Gemara is going to say. What is the case of this wine press? So the Gemara says, my God, what is this wine press that you're talking about? If you're telling me, if this thing that's pressing, let's say the grapes, this item that you're using to press the grapes is, let's say this thing is 10 tvachim high. If it's 10 tvachim high, if it's big enough that it's like a private area, so then we already learned you can't go stand in public and drink from private. So if the wine press has a status of private property, so then that's the law. You can't go from public to private. You can't stand in public, drink in private. You might come draw it out. If it should happen, if this wine press is in public property, right? Let's say it's a wine press and it's lower than 3 tvachim. Anything in public property, good morning. Anything in public property that's lower than 3 tvachim is like on the ground. If you have any, it's like part of the ground. And the ground in public property is public property, right? So if, let's say, it's something that's if you have something in public property that's, you put up we put this in public property, this might have a status of private. It's a private area. It's not, people don't walk on it, and it's not, say it's not used for people, and let's say it's not something that people put things on, or whatever, a certain type of item, that's considered private. It's a separate, just like if you build a building in public property, you build a booth in public property, it's a booth. It's not public. It becomes private, that specific area. But anything that's lower than 3 tvachim, lower than let's say 11 inches from the ground, is like part of the ground. So if that's the wine press is in public property, even to the Rabbim Tanina, we learned that you can't stand in private and stick your head into public and drink from public. So the Elalav Carmelit, it's a type of wine press that's not, doesn't fit the dimensions of public property or private property, but it fits the dimensions of a carmelit, this rabbinic area that's forbidden. And yet it says the law is the same. I can't go ahead and bend over and take and drink from this carmelit. So even if I would actually draw it to me, it's only prohibited because of a fence. So it's a fence on a fence. It's Mark's case of going from the tent into, or David's case, tent into the desert. It's carmelit, private, and yet you tell me I can't do it, even though the whole thing is a protection for a biblical law. So we see from the case of the God that we're protecting, when it comes to Shabbat, comes to carrying, we're gonna make a double fence. Want to wish everyone a, no, it's not, no, finally, we're not gonna make a double fence. We're not gonna, no, stay tuned tomorrow. You gotta come tomorrow. Double fence is when the rabbis create a law, forbade you to do something to protect a rabbinic law, which is, right, the case would be if drinking, let's say, if let's say there's something that, let's say this. Let's say in the public, right. Let's say this in public property, maybe it's not high enough to be private, but it's not 10 feet high, but it's also not low enough to be public. So let's say rabbinically, I can't go ahead and take something from on Shabbat. I can't go ahead. If there's something on top of this in public property, I can't take it from here to public. But the rabbis would say I can't even if I can't even stand on it, I can't bend over because I might come to draw it to me. Even if I draw it to me, it's only a rabbinic issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Are you gonna join us?
Yeah, I'm gonna join you there. The college is off today. So yeah, exactly. David, beautiful. Yeah, nice size class. Adam, thank you for your Morris.
Every day 7:45 every day.
I hear you, Morris.
Get a crowd.
Nice crowd, right? Good morning. Doctor, you davened already? Oh, very good.